So let us now discuss the powers of Congress with respect to budgetary appropriation. So, in addition to what we've discussed on the legislative powers, particularly as to the veto power of the president, you must note that here, if Congress will pass a law with respect to general appropriations or with refers to the budget, the president may do an item veto as a general rule. Okay, as a general rule, the president should veto the entire law. Okay, so for example, if the law is not related to budgetary appropriation, let's say it's an ordinary law. If the president vetoes that bill, it totally vetoes the entire bill. You cannot have generally a piecemeal veto. Okay, of you cannot have a piecemeal veto. Okay, there's also one instance in a case decided by the Supreme Court. You cannot item The Supreme Court categorically held that the president cannot cannot even veto a bill which has already been you can a president cannot veto something which is already a law, because there was an instance where I think President Aquino vetoed not realizing that what she was vetoing was already a law. So you cannot veto a law. Okay, but insofar as budgetary appropriation is concerned, the president may veto per item, because remember, in an appropriations bill, it's it's more in detail. Of course, it depends on what projects or programs. So, if the president, since it's an issue on appropriation, the president may see fit, okay, later on, that he might lessen or not agree with how how Congress is providing, that particular appropriation amount. Of course, this is again also a check and balance power of the president, because note that at the start of the session, of course, at the start of this, of course, the budget would always come from the president first. Okay, so I think the president has the wisdom and the discretion to determine what budget should be passed or not, diba? So that's a possibility. Now, okay, let's go to this particularity on budgetary appropriation. We have to relate Congress's power of budgetary appropriation with the budgetary power of the president. Okay, so the president also has the power to set the budget. Okay, insofar as appropriation is concerned, some of your law books will say that Congress has the power of the purse. Okay, so it is Congress who is going to approve such budget. Okay, and it's ultimately them who would approve the particular numbers. Okay, but of course, the powers arising from this budgetary appropriation has limits under our constitution. Okay, so but first, before we discuss all the limitations, I think I would want you to understand how does budget becomes a budget, then how it's appropriate, and then after appropriation, how is budget going to be spent. Okay, so we first look at the budget cycle. Okay, so your budget cycle. Okay, so your budget cycle is more related to the executive power, because of course, it's the president the executive department who prepares the budget. Okay, so if you're going to check the case of Gingona versus Karali yata yon. So, but of course, that Gingona case was reiterated in the DAP case, yung Arroyo versus Aquino. Okay, the DAP case. So, what happens during the Philippine budget cycle? So, of course, may four steps yan. So, we have budget preparation, budget legislation and legislative authorization, budget execution, and budget accountability. Okay, so, paano nagsisimula yung budget? So, magsimula tayo dun sa kaninang discussion, our previous discussion on the opening of Congress. So, syempre, Congress will open at the fourth Monday of July. So, syempre, if Congress would open its session, di ba? So, it entails that, of course, Congress is, aside from projecting new legislation for the administration's policy making desires, di ba? Aside from that, syempre, ang priority would be the budget, di ba? So, as early as August pa lang, as early as August, the executive department and the legislative department is now busy as to budget preparation. So paano magsisimula yung budget preparation? So may tinatawag tayong budget call. So I think yung sa mga nagwo-work sa government, familiar kayo dito sa mga terms na to eh. So, 'di ba? So una, usually August nangyayari to, magkakaroon na ng budget call si Department of Budget and Management. Okay? So ano ba purpose nung budget call? So the purpose of your budget call is pagsasubmitin yung mga agencies kung kung magkano yung ibibigay, 'di ba? Yung ano yung propose na pwede niyo i-budget for the coming GAA. So for example, ngayon 2024, 'di ba? Nung August, malaman nag-budget call of course this was to be note, this was recorded in October, 'di ba? So malaman nung August, 'di ba? The previous August, okay? There was already a budget call, 'di ba? Yun. So, may budget call ko. So, anong gagawin ng budget call? So, anong gagawin sa budget call? So, usually, magtatanong-tanong na si DBM. So, syempre, uutusan niya yung mga heads ng departments from all under the executive branch and other government offices. So, magtatanong siya, ano yung budget ninyo? Okay? Syempre, except sa Supreme Court. Later on naman, di ba? And I think we have discussed naman sa Supreme Court, may fiscal autonomy sila. So, let's assume that we're talking about the offices, yung administrative offices under the executive department. Okay, so magta-budget call ngayon si Department of Budget and Management. So, ipapalista lahat ng mga requirements, yung mga documents. So ano yung kailangan, what is needed by the office or the agency. Okay, pag na-compile na lahat yun, isasubmit nila yun sa DBM. Okay, so of course, after that, mangyayari, pag submit sa DBM, syempre, bibigay sa presidente yon, diba? So, now, the president will now submit, diba? Either the president itself or, of course, through the DBM, kasi syempre, cabinet naman si DBM eh. But, of course, pag nakumpleto na yung budget call requirement, they're going to pass all of those submissions sa Congress. Pag naipasa na sa Kongreso yan, meron na tayong tinatawag na budget deliberation or legislative authorization. Yun yung nakikita nyo nung last few months sa Kongreso. Because after ng budget call, Congress is now deliberating on budgets, on particular budgets on certain offices. Diba? So, kung nakita nyo, diba, ang usual suspects lagi noon dyan, diba, before what happened this year, diba, in 2024, ang usual na laging hinohold dyan is, if you can recall, yung mga state universities and colleges. Diba? Especially nung panahon ng previous administration, diba? They are accusing state universities, some state universities and colleges from encouraging communism or all of those rebellious things, diba? Kaya minsan nagkakaroon sila ng budget cuts because of yung mga ganitong bagay na minsan dinidiscuss ng mga congressmen natin, diba? So, nagkakaroon ng issue, okay? So, nababawasan yung budget. Minsan naman, question ba't ang taas ng budget, di ba? But sometimes the discussion is a little bit, just a few questions, then they'll just let it go. They'll still approve the budget within the GAA, okay? Siyempre, peculiar lang yun nangyari this year, itong 2024, because the Congress decided to exercise their check and balance power during the congressional deliberations and started questioning the budget of the Vice President, di ba? So, yun yung action na nakikita niyo sa budget legislations. Kasi syempre, we get it. Nagkaroon ng budget call si DBM. So, sinabit yung budget. Now, of course, it's up for Congress to decide on the budget. Syempre, isi-screen nila yan. Kasi syempre, maraming factors na i-consider dapat ang Kongreso. Syempre, meron ba revenue? Enough ba yung revenue coming from the BIR? Diba? Enough yung collection. Meron ba tayong current debt? Diba? May deficits ba tayo? kakayanin ba? Or sige, hindi kakayanin ng BIR. Pwede ba tayo umutang sa World Bank or sa other global financial institutions, 'di ba? Maraming ganung factors eh, 'di ba? So pwede mo singit 'yon kasi budget 'yan eh, 'di ba? You wanted to spread the budget, 'di ba? O to certain places, 'di ba? Kaya nga, 'di ba, little bit of a side, okay? Although sa constitutional law to discussion to, you will learn, 'di ba, if you can recall sa constitutional law, if your property is subject to expropriation, 'di ba? Siyempre, if your property is subject to expropriation, you're going to get just compensation, 'di ba? So, siyempre, example, DPWH, kinuhaan ka ng kapraso ng bahay mo, 'di ba? So, siyempre, hindi mo pa pwedeng gratis 'yon. Siyempre, may just compensation 'yan under the law. It's a constitutional right under Article 3, Section 9, okay? Pero siyempre, magkakaroon ng award yan. Siyempre, dadaan sa korte, i-award ng korte, di ba? We have new laws on that. Basta meron kang makukuha just compensation, okay? But the question is, number one, automatic ba yan just compensation? Number two, kung automatic ba yan just compensation, pwede mo bang hatakan ng gobyerno ng properties para masatisfy yung judgment? The answer to both of those questions is no. Kasi number one, government property yung hahatake mo just in case. And remember, government property, be it money or real estate, is not subject to execution. Okay? Number two, syempre, yung money na pinag-uusapan nating just compensation, hindi pa siya technically existing, 'di ba? Hindi pa rin siya technically existing kasi kailangan mo na magkaroon na appropriation galing sa Kongreso para mabayaran ka ng just compensation mo. That is why, ang laging sagot dyan, pag example, nagkaroon ka ng final judgment sa court na may just compensation ka sa expropriated property, the next step that you're going to do is go to your congressman. Tell your congressman, meron akong award dito. Please include it in the proposed budget. 'Di ba? Para for next year, pwede ka nang bayaran ng gobyerno. Hindi siya automatic na parang sa ordinary case, pwede kang maghatak ng gusto mo ng statwa or whatever, 'di ba? Pero pag ang kalaban mo ay government, syempre you cannot garnish properties or levy government properties. But babayaran ka man ng government, but you have to be diligent enough to go to your congressman to request for to have that appropriation to be included in your next year's budget para mabayaran ka naman next year. Okay? So, ganun yan. So, ganun din naman sa mga other items sa government. I think most of you are working in government. You're aware of this naman. Siyempre, pag umakit na sa Congress, they're going to deliberate or act on the budget proposals, 'di ba? Tapos pag nakita naman na nila based on their wisdom and judgment na okay yung budget, 'di ba? Or gusto nila magtabas ng budget, they're now going to formulate it within the General Appropriations Bill pa lang, okay? Bill pa lang syempre. So nagkaroon ng General Appropriations Bill, okay? So syempre, you have to relate this to limitations syempre sa appropriation na. Kasi doon papasok yung limitations pag pumasok ang Kongreso. Siyempre, we have Article 6, Section 29. Siyempre, no money shall be paid out of the Treasury except in pursuance of an appropriation made by law. So, kailangan mo ng batas. Okay? Then, let's go to other limitations by Congress. Okay? So, other limitations ng Congress, di ba? Siyempre, appropriation bills mo, kanina we discussed, kailangan nag-originate siya sa House of Representatives, 'di ba? Kasi yun nga, parang yung discussion ko kanina sa eminent domain. You need to go to your congressman, 'di ba? 'Di ba? Malay mo may mga appropriation talagang local in character. Kailangan ilapit mo dun sa local congressman mo or party list representative. That's the reason why appropriation bills shall originate exclusively sa House of Representatives. Okay? Then of course, yun nga, Congress may not increase yung appropriations recommended by the President for the operation of the government as specified in the budget. Okay, so di ba kanina nag-uusap na tayo dun sa budget cycle, di ba? So syempre, yung ipropose ng President, hindi pwedeng i-increase 'yon, di ba? Okay, so yun yung isang limitation under the Constitution. Okay, sa Article Section 25, paragraph 1. Then, Congress may not clutter the general appropriation law with provisions not specifically related to some particular item of appropriation, and every such provision shall be limited in its operation to the appropriation item with which it relates. So that's your Section 25, paragraph 2. Then, Congress may not adopt a procedure for approving appropriations for it's different from procedure from other appropriations. Then, special appropriations bills must specify the purpose and are intended must be supported by funds certified as available by the National Treasurer. If the funds are not actually available, the special appropriation bill must provide a corresponding revenue proposal. Okay. Then, of course, Congress has limited discretion to authorize transfer of funds. Then, discretionary funds appropriated for particular officials shall be disbursed only for public purposes to be supported by appropriate vouchers and subject to such guidelines as may be prescribed by law. Then, Congress cannot cripple the operation of government by its failure to refuse to pass a general appropriations bill as the Constitution provides for automatic reenactment. Okay, so such reappropriation remains in force until the new general appropriations law is approved. Okay, so ito yung reenactment provision. Okay, then the expenditure of public money or property for religious purposes is prohibited. So may express yan sa Section 29, paragraph 2. Then finally, the general appropriation law must be based on the budget prepared by the president. Then aside from this, of course, the general premise that of course your public money can be appropriated only for a public purpose. Okay? So, isa-isa natin yung some of these provisions. So, kanina, di ba, pag example, hindi ka nakapagpasa ng appropriations bill, re-enact lang yung bill. Okay? Siyempre, that's not an ideal situation naman. Kaya yung gusto nung iba, meron talagang gaa. Kasi, siyempre, malay mo, yung expenditures mo for 2025, iba yung expenditures niya from 2026. Example, may dagdag kang infra, di ba? Infrastructure. You can, siyempre, ipopropose mo yun sa bagong budget. Diba? Siyempre, kung i-repass mo yung budget, siyempre, ma-hassle yung mga possible obligations mo dun sa next budget, diba? Kasi ni-repass mo siya eh, diba? Meron kang pera, pero may parang you have to pick on the possible puzzles, diba? Kasi siyempre, iba naman yung pwede mong gawing project sa 2026, sa 2027, and so on and so forth, diba? So, pero syempre, just in case lang, nire-enact lang yan. Kasi, at syempre, kailangan mag-run ng government. Hindi naman pa pwedeng nakasteady nga lang. Yun nga lang, if may ibang programs lang yung presidente, baka mahinder. Of course, ganito lang yun. Either mahinder siya, or, pag pinersa mo, pwede ka makasuhan ng graft and corrupt practices cases, or indirect bribery at the minimum. Diba? So, when you speak of indirect bribery, diba, under the revised penal code, hindi pa indirect bribery, correction, not indirect bribery, you call this technical malversation pala, hindi indirect bribery, technical malversation. So, when we speak of technical malversation, di ba, you have the budget, di ba, nakalagay yung budget, naka-assign siya. Ngayon, Congress or anyone in particular, any government officer, cannot use that budget for another item. Okay? Kahit na sabihin mong public purpose yung other item na yon, under the revised penal code, it's technical malversation. Okay? Kung technical malversation siya, pwede kang kasuhan. Okay? Aside from technical malversation, you're altering the project program, that might be a graft and corrupt practice act. Diba? You may be liable under RA 3019. Okay? So, note nyo na hindi pwede strict yung construction nitong mga nakalagay sa Section 25 natin. Okay? Strict yan. Okay? It's very much strict. Okay? Now, we now go dun sa it should be a specific item. Okay? So, kailangan it should be specific item. You should specify the purpose. Let's zero in on 25 paragraph 2 and 25 paragraph 4. Because related ito sa discussion sa pork barrel. Okay? So, if you can recall, di ba, may tinatawag tayong pork barrel. Okay? So, Nung una kasi ang pork barrel, you call that the CDF or the Countrywide Development Fund. So noon, maliit lang yan. Naalala ko nung I'm still high school noon. Ang mga CDF lang dati noon ng congressman, because they started giving up this CDF, naging siyang more in the news at the time of President Ramos. Okay, so binigyan niya ng mga CDF itong mga congressman. So alala ko na mga CDF lang noon, nasa 12 million lang yung mga yan eh. Maliit lang ang mga maliit lang yan, 12 to 20 million lang yung mga CDF dati ng congressman. Although at that time it's already been questioned. Why is it why are you doing this? So question yan dun sa kaso ng Pilconsa versus Enriquez sometime in 1995. So sabi ng Supreme Court, well, they first ruled that wala namang problem sa pagbibigay ng Countrywide Development Fund kasi specific naman sa congressman naman daw yung binibigay na pera. So malilik mo pa rin siya kung paano ginastos. Okay? Yan ang sabi nila dun sa Pilconsa versus Enriquez. So eventually lumaki ang amount ng PDAF. Naging triple million figures na, 'di ba, ang usapan sa PDAF. Oh. Then came the Napoles story, okay? Na unfortunately, na-acquit lahat ng senador na involved, okay? I don't know if it's unfortunate or not, pero for me, it's not about them being complicit with that, but I think this is more on the justice system. Kasi syempre, you had this investigation, di ba? Wala naman palang enough evidence. Of course, ang masisisi tuloy ang courts, but remember, the courts are just doing their job. They're just doing their job in trying to rule on the case based on what's presented to them. Eh kung kulang naman talaga ang ebidensya, di ba? But nonetheless of the aftermath, note that when the pork barrel scam erupted with the time of Napoles, yung Napoles na pork barrel scam, okay? Ang laki na ng pork barrel noon. So, nagkaroon ngayon bigla ng initiative to file a case. So, we have now Bellica versus Ochoa. Okay? So, sabi sa Bellica versus Ochoa, they revisited Pilconsa versus Enriquez and decided that Pilconsa is not already good jurisprudence. So, ang sabi ng Supreme Court, yung practice of giving PDAF, okay, or pork barrel, kasi from CDF naging na siyang PDAF eh, okay? So the practice of giving PDAF is unconstitutional because it violates the specification requirements under our Constitution. Siyempre, bibigay lang doon sa congressman, let's say 250 million pesos. Wala specified amount siya. Well, yun nga, 'di ba? Specified siya sa congressman, but of course, for purposes of delivering the public necessity or yung result nung amounts, 'di ba, ng public funds, 'di ba? Syempre kailangan specified siya sa certain activities para ma-link mo agad na talagang pumunta sa yun yung point naman kasi ng specification eh. Kailangan ma-identify mo na it's a project of this. Kasi if you're not going to identify it, syempre baka magkaroon ng question na saan napunta yung pera? Hindi naman pala naka-item yung mga bagay-bagay na to, di ba? So that's the point of yung requirement of having specified funds. Now, of course, syempre alam naman natin nagkaroon ng ruling sa PDAF, but of course, congressmen now tend to put items. Okay? So, pag napansin nyo may mga items na yan, that might be a circumvention of the ruling. Okay? Kung naalala nyo, di ba? Parang election law lang yan. Di ba? Kahit na anong gawin mo, sabihin mong baka partisan political activity na ikita mo sa kalsada, wala naman nakalagay na vote. So, hindi siya pasok sa partisan political activity. So parang gano'n nangyari although of course it's a prevention, 'di ba? Na hindi ka na pwede magpasa ng parang measures appropriation mo that you're going to lump a certain congressman or member of Congress to be given discretion over the funds. So inaalis ng Supreme Court yung discretion. Of course, syempre, yung iba ginagawa. Ngayon, Congress, I think, sabi nung ibang nag-aalingas-ngas dyan, di ba? they're trying to itemize, to put specific items na lang, di ba? Para lusot dun sa itemization requirement, dun sa specification requirement. But of course, that's another discussion for another day, okay? But the point is, Belica versus Ochoa zeroed in on the premise that budget should be specified. Yung ibibigay na budget sa Congress, sa any appropriation should be specified for something. You cannot make it discretionary on the part of the public officer. Now, okay, so we now have discussed yung limitations sa appropriation. So syempre, pag natapos na yung appropriations mo, 'di ba? Ano na, okay na. So, yung Congress na will now pass, syempre, following the procedure on passing a law, magkakaroon na ng Appropriations Act. So, usually it's a GAA. Okay, so it's a General Appropriations Act. So, syempre, may iba pang limitations yan. So, meron ka sa GAA. So, of course, yun nga, kailangan paid out of the treasury. Okay? Before, I'll go back pala. Special funds. Okay? I-emphasize ko din yung special funds. So, yung special funds, nangyayari usually ang special funds kung, for example, meron kang surplus. Kasi hindi naman lahat ng budget na gagastos mo yan for a particular year. Minsan, nagkakaroon ka ng savings. Di ba? Siyempre, yung savings mo, mapupunta sa National Treasury. Okay? Ngayon, siyempre, hindi ka naman pwedeng magpasa ng batas na hindi mo naman pwedeng kumuha ng appropriation ng walang batas. So, hindi ka naman pwedeng, as I said, di ba kanina, mata-technical malversation ka if you use a budget for a specific public purpose, then you made an unauthorized use of that budget to another purpose. Kahit na public siya, in purpose din, kailangan magkaroon ka ng kailangan magpaalam ka. So, paano ka magpapaalam? Gagawin mo siyang, magpapasa ka rin ng bill, ng law, or an appropriation measure, di ba? To accommodate that fund. So, isa-specify mo dun sa appropriation measure na yon, yung kung saan mo kukunin yung special fund. Okay? So, isa-specify mo kung saan mo kukunin. So, for example, surplus ng PCSO, pwede mong pwede mong i-legislate yun. Siyempre, kung wala ka namang pagkukunan na special funding, pwede ka naman mag-ask ng revenue measure. Isasama mo lang siya according sa requirements ng Constitution. So, kailangan mo lang na revenue measure din doon. So, gusto mong magkaroon ng special funds, pero ayaw mo kumuha sa treasury. Pwede naman na kumuha ka pwede kang magkaroon ng mag-impose ka ng bagong tax, di ba? That's a possibility. So yun yung mangyayari doon, okay? So, alright. Then, of course, may limitation din sa Section 5 to 25, di ba? Sa Article 6, Section 25. So, hindi ka pwede rin mag-authorize ng transfer ng appropriation. So, ito yung sinasabi ko din kanina. Kailangan ng authorization. So, ano exceptions niya? Of course, number 1 kanina, yung special fund na sinasabi ko. Number 2, may limitation. May parang exceptions din yan na, however, the President or the President of the Senate or the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Chief Justice and heads of the Constitutional Commissions may, by law, be authorized to augment any item in the General Appropriations Law for their respective offices from savings or other items in their respective appropriation. Okay? Ilin nyo lang muna yan. Kasi, syempre, assume kasi may pupuntahan tayo dyan. Okay? I-note nyo na kailangan yung item mo, kailangan nasa within your savings doon sa items. Okay? Now, syempre, let's say may batas na. So, syempre, pag may batas ka na, may GAA ka na, of course, there would now be budget execution. Okay? So, pag nagkaroon ka na ng budget execution, syempre, this is the function now of your DBM. So, DBM now is tasked to issue the programs and guidelines do sa release ng funds, di ba? Kasi syempre naka-appropriate yan. Syempre, may specification ang Congress dyan paano mo gagamitin yung funds. Syempre, di ba, kung may law ka, syempre, yung DBM is your implementing authority, your own implementing office, or your implementing department. So, i-implement nila yung distribution ng funds, magpe-prepare na sila ng cash release programs. Of course, syempre, kasama doon yung release ng pera at saka ng disbursement. Alright? Okay, so, So, syempre, yung implementation ng GA is directed by the guidelines issued by the Department of Budget and Management. Then, syempre, pag naibigay na yung budget, syempre, the last step would be budget accountability. So, of course, syempre, it ensures yung government funds have been effectively and efficiently utilized to achieve the state socio-economic goals, di ba? Alright, so, okay, yan, discuss natin si execution at saka si accountability. Syempre, pag in-execute mo na yung budget, di ba? Syempre, magkakaroon ng defraying ng cost. Syempre, as I said kanina, later on, hindi naman lahat ng pera na yan magagamit mo, 'di ba? Magkakaroon ka ng whatever happens. Government, depending on how government is thrifty or maybe thrifty or government is just efficient in using their funds, okay? Magkakaroon ka ng savings diyan. That's sure, okay? I always say this pag I think I mentioned this before, but government by itself is business, ah. Yung processing nila like bidding, yung budget execution na yan. Then sometimes they go to bidding, sometimes these are mechanisms for government to earn income. Okay? Validly, ah. I mean, that's a way for government to earn income by itself. Diba? Kasi pag hindi na mag-earn ng government ng income, hindi na sila mag-operate properly. Okay? That's the point there. Okay? So, kaya syempre, pag in-execute mo, may kakaroon ka ng savings dyan. Ngayon, ang tanong, anong gagawin ngayon ng presidente dyan sa savings na yan? Syempre, syempre ang default niya, bibigay mo sa National Treasury. Okay? Tapos, saka nyo na lang galawin, di ba, pag kailangan. Ayun, pasa ka nga ng special law, ng special fund legislation. Or, kung involve if it involves yung the Office of the President, Chief Justice, Senate President, kung kailangan lang i-augment yung General Appropriations Law, okay? Yung General Appropriation items, they can do so under a specific General Appropriations Law, di ba? From the savings, di ba? So pwede mo i-state yun sa savings. Ngayon, next question dyan is, pwede bang i-park ng presidente yung amount para ibigay sa ibang offices? Kasi remember, pag binigay, especially dun sa concept that the president may be authorized to augment any item, di pwede nilang galawin yon. Pwede ba nilang i-distribute sa ibang office? Kasi remember, Office of the President, all-encompassing ang power ng Office of the President. Diba? Kaya nga may faithful execution clause yan eh. They see to it that all laws will be executed faithfully. It also ensures that since he has technically all the control, di ba? Syempre may department head siya. Of course, but that's limitations as to alter ego. But in theory, the president has the power to control that budget, di ba? Kung para saan gagamitin yan, di ba? Particularly sometimes sa offices niya, they have this specific provision, di ba? Pero may limitation ba siya? So, for example, we have this concept of impoundment. So, pag in-impound mo yung pag nag-impound ka, you're practically parking those savings to be used to other projects. Okay? So, lumalabas para siyang confidential funds na binastos mo, pero hindi siya confidential, di ba? In a sense, kasi confidential funds would be a different discussion eh. Di ba? If you can recall, kung example, ibang item yon, tapos pwedeng galawin ng presidente, pwede ba na isalin sa ibang project? Di ba? That's the concept of your impoundment eh. Well, nag-ruling na ang Supreme Court yan doon sa Arroyo versus Aquino. So, of course, yung Belgica is your PDAP case. Arroyo versus Aquino is your DAP case, yung Disbursement Acceleration Program. If you can recall, di ba, sa sa DAP na issue, si Pinoy, di ba, si President Aquino III, may mga savings siya, ginawa niya, inipon niya, inimpound niya para gamitin sa ibang mga other programs. Okay? Through his discretion. Okay? Yun yung nangyari. Nag-call siya ng discretion niya, dun niya nilipat yung funds sa ibang mga projects. So practically, pinark niya lahat ng budget. Kaya nga, actually, the accusation against him during that time, if I can recall, nagtitipid, quote-unquote, yung gobyerno. But in reality, well, he was just impounding the amounts. Now, nagpalabas, naalala ko sila siya ng parang info video, parang, well, you can call it propaganda or what. Na parang, well, parang sinasabi niya na, well, it's, kung hindi ko pinark to, hindi magkakaroon ng ganitong project sa isang lugar, ganon, bla 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 bla. So, yun yung para excuse niya na, that's the legal excuse that, well, we've been doing this for projects, di ba? So, is this going to be with public purpose? It would redound to the benefit of the general public, di ba? So, naalala ko may mga videos sila no na parang ganun gina-justify nila yung nangyari, di ba? So umabot sa Supreme Court. So, sabi ng Supreme Court, hindi pwedeng i-impound ng presidente yan. Kasi you would still violate appropriation rules. Di ba? Kailangan mo pa rin ng appropriation laws to touch or make movement to that budget. Okay? So, sabi ng Supreme Court, hindi pa pwede yan, that's unauthorized. Nagkaroon na silang categorical ruling that impoundment is an unconstitutional act on the part of the president. Diba? Kaya nga nangyari nga aftermath niyan, 'di ba? Parang may nagsasabi ba't di kasuhan ng technical malversation si Pinoy. Okay? Pero well, it's just an alingas-ngas, 'di ba? Pero that's the point of your Araulio versus Aquino. Okay? That's the point of your Araulio versus Aquino. Okay? So, all right. Now, let's go now to budget accountability, di ba? So, nakikita nyo ngayon itong budget accountability sa nangyayari ngayon sa Vice President as we speak right now, di ba? So, Congress now, of course, aside from exercising their discretion, they already slashed the budget as we speak, di ba? They already slashed the proposed budget to a little bit half of what it used to be, di ba? So, siyempre, ang next question dyan is, siyempre, one of the basis na kaya siya hinold, di ba, is, bigla na lumabas yung Commission on Audit. Well, allegedly, meron mga notice of disallowances sa Office of the Vice President. Okay, so why I'm going to relate this to budget accountability because, of course, the budget accountability, as I said, it ensures that government has been effectively and efficiently utilized. Okay, to achieve the goals of the state, di ba? Particularly sa budget na yon. Okay? Now, of course, an agency's accountability may be examined and evaluated to, of course, performance targets and outcomes, budget accountability reports, a review of agency performance, and audit conducted by the Commission on Audit. Siyempre, 1, 2, and 3, these are within the mechanisms ng office itself, di ba? Yung productivity, di ba? Usually, doon nyo rin binibase yung some here working in government. That's the basis of where you are getting your productivity bonus, di ba? If there is any productivity bonus. Para siya pinaka-critical dyan number 4, yung audit conducted by the Commission on Audit. Okay? So, kung naalala nyo, di ba, meron akong question, hindi ko maalala kung sinong sa section ko tinanong. Naalala niyo yung tanong tungkol dun sa DMW, yung gumawa sila ng fund. Gumawa sila ng parang education fund sa mga seaman. Tapos question ni Attorney Salvadora, 'di ba? Okay. Tapos 'di ba naging siyang moot and academic kasi well, sinasabi, may sumagot sa inyo moot and academic na siya. Okay, kasi moot and academic na siya kasi kasi 'di ba, nung nagkaso siya, inatras lahat ng DMW lahat nung parang inabolish nila yung program, binalik nila yung pera, 'di ba? Oh, so yun yung doon. So, allegedly binalik, basta inabolish ko lang eh. But anyways, the point that is this, 'di ba? 'Di ba, kung babasahin niyo yung problem doon sa point of view of this on the discussion here, 'di ba? 'Di ba illegal yung ginawa ni DMW doon? Kasi kumuha siya ng fund, nag-create siya ng parang funding scheme. Siyempre public purpose 'yon, 'di ba? Since public purpose 'yon, hindi pwedeng kumolect, may rule yan, may COA rulings yan, okay? So may COA rulings yan to the effect na hindi mo pwedeng galawin, hindi ka pwedeng Hindi ka pwedeng gumawa ng parang trust fund, okay? Unless lang kung meron kang batas, di ba? Na nagki-create ka ng trust fund or meron ka special authority, okay? So, by itself, illegal yung ginagawa ni DMW dun sa storya, okay? Kasi doon pa lang doon sa public purpose arc, violation na siya. Now, kaya ko ina-emphasize yan is because basic yan sa government accounting na hindi mo pwedeng galawin yan. So, ang mangyayari dyan, pag nakita ng COA yan, red flag agad yan. So, syempre, anong gagawin ng COA? Of course, COA would first issue an audit observation memorandum or yung AOM. Yung AOM, warning yon, okay? Warning yon. Papadalang ka. Government office, your, anong tawag dito? It seems that one of your projects is this, blah, 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 blah. It appears that it violates the rules on accounting, blah, 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 blah. If I were you, you rectify it. Okay? So, AOM pa lang yon. So, yun yung first layer, yung AOM, yung Audit Observation Memorandum. Pag hindi hinid ng pag hindi hinid ng, kasi mangyayari dyan, utos din sa AOM, we would suggest that you return the funds. Or, kung merong na-defray na public expenses, ibalik nyo yung pera. Okay? Ibalik nyo yung pera. Okay? Let's say, in-ignore ng government yun, ng government agency yon. Ang susunod na sa'yo, hindi na AOM. Notice of disallowance na. Okay? Yun yung nangyari sa Vice President. Inissuean siya ng Notice of Disallowance. Sa yung pinag-iinitan siya, di ba, doon sa mga session ng Congress na ayaw niya mag-take ng oath and all of that. Kasi, actually, meron siyang valid defenses kasi doon. Kasi, pag inissuean ka ng Notice of Disallowance, may procedure kasi yan. Okay? Ang procedure dyan, I don't know if they're going to change it because of the Vice President, but the regular procedure dyan is, ano yung sinasabi ni Congressman Marcoleta? Pag binigyan ka ng Notice of Disallowance, it's not yet final. Okay? Kasi, ano ba ang term? Notice nga di ba? Notice. So, kung notice siya, para siyang demand letter. Kailangan mo lang mag-comply. Okay? Kailangan mo lang mag-comply on something. Kaya notice siya. So, ano yung compliance na nire-require? Ang standard kasi niya, pag nabigyan ka ng Notice of Disallowance, may 6 months yung agency or kung isa naka-address dun sa head, may 6 months yung agency or yung head to rectify. Okay? May 6 months yan to rectify meron yung 6 months, di ba, to rectify the items, di ba? Kasi pag hindi mo na-rectify yan, doon na yung magkakaproblema. Example, hindi mo na-explain ngayon sa Notice of Disallowance example, magpas na yung 6 months mo, hindi mo pa rin in-explain. Tutuluyan ka ng i-block yung gamit. Or kung nagamit mo na, ipababalik na sa'yo yung funding. Otherwise, kung hindi mo binalik, yun. Susunod na makikita mo magbe-mail sa'yo, si ombudsman na. Kasi, i-issuean ka na ng notice, di ba? So, yun yung nangyari doon, okay? Okay. So that's your that's your work of Congress, okay? So that's the limitation as to your appropriation, okay?